Now, fantastic, and Councillor David has sauntered back into the room, so we shall continue on with where we were on adult social care. The recording has started. Fabulous. Councillor Amanda Williams, I think you had your hand up and then we sort of went down and up and down.
Yeah, I've got one on children's and then I've got one on the next part of the report. So the learning disabilities one I can pick up at the end of the report.
Fantastic. Okay, no worries. Has anyone got any further questions on adult social care? I'm assuming Councillor Tim Thomas has left us because I know he had to leave. Okie doke. Before we move on then, because I know members have to leave, Councillor Ross Thomas, did you have any questions at all on any parts of the agenda, the rest of the report? Because I know you have to leave about midday, so I just want to make sure you have your questions asked before you have to leave us.
Not at this point, Chair, but I'm sticking around until 12. Thanks.
Fabulous. Okay, no problem. All right then, Councillor David, do you want your hand up?
Thanks, Chair. I welcome the progress that's been made in terms of recruitment and retention of staff, particularly social workers, given the challenges we've had over the years and the challenges that every local authority faces around recruitment and retention. I wanted to specifically ask though about recruitment and retention of domiciliary care workers, because we know that has led, unfortunately, to some delays in the packages of cares and a delay in discharge from hospital for some people. So I think it would be helpful to have an update on that if we can, and the progress that's been made around that. Thanks, Chair.
No problem at all. I'm looking to our invitees. Jackie.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the question. So domiciliary recruitment into that workforce, probably coming out of COVID, was a significant pressure area for adult services, and we had some specific programmes that we were reporting up through the Social Services Improvement Board around the work we were doing around recruitment and retention. It does peak and it does dip, but at the moment we're seeing a steady number of applicants coming into the service. We are doing a significant piece of work around remodelling our domiciliary services and how we operate in terms of that, and part of that will be looking at the demand and the capacity of our in-house service in terms of that. In terms of the independent domiciliary care market, we are seeing that people are able to recruit and we are able to commission packages in a timely way, almost pre-pandemic levels, really, in terms of our ability to broker new packages. So that is a significant improvement to where we were about 18 months ago. Also, we've been working with employability within the council, and we've got a specific pathway of care new programme that we've done one session of that, and we've got another one coming up in October. That has been successful. So it's an introduction into social care. It's an introduction into delivering direct care, of which domiciliary is part of that. So there are quite a number of programmes that are still ongoing, and we are seeing a steady increase. So no longer one of my red hotspot areas. So yeah, thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's welcome news. In terms of waiting times and demand numbers, the quanta, what's that looking like currently? And also just some feedback I had on the weekend from a worker who works for one of our independent providers. One of our independent providers that's changed their ownership model to a model where the workers, the care workers, have a ownership in the firm. I don't know if it's still a firm or if it's changed it to a not-for-profit organisation, but she was very positive about that, and that was a reason she gave for wanting to stay with that organisation, because I did try to poach her for Bridgend, but she said she was happy where she was because she loves her job, but she was also very pleased around that, because I know that's something that we have to consider under our duty. And I suppose I'll sneak another question in there as well, Chair, sorry, with your permission. It's just how we're discharging that duty as well under the Wellbeing Act to, I know there's some work's happened around encouraging social enterprise and provision through that route as well. Thanks, Chair.
Jackie, do you want to go back?
Yeah, so in terms of our pathway of care delay, so that's the national reporting of delays coming out of an acute hospital. So for us in Bridgend, linked to domiciliary, so in terms of home care packages and reablement packages, we had 23 people that were waiting. So again, significant difference to where we were 18 months ago. And all of that information will be contained in the report that we're doing for the 23rd of September. What we are seeing though is that what we're trying to do is reset our whole reablement service so that we've got more proportion of people that go through our reablement and therefore able to, maximise their strengths as part of that programme. That is taking some time to work through the system, because what we need is people to flow in and out of that short-term service. So again, fuller details will be on the 23rd. I don't know that company that you're talking about in terms of that, but we can pick that up with Pete. Right, okay, yeah, okay, thank you very much. And the social enterprise, yeah.
I think in terms of social enterprise work, there's two things that I would highlight. The first is there's a lot of work going on with carers, with Compass, and that work, which is funded by the Regional Integration Fund, is trying to look at, similarly we've got with other groups, about self-supporting networks there. And then we're also looking at, in our day opportunities review, we're looking at opportunities for social enterprises there. The third element, just to say, I suppose, with the eliminating profit, we're waiting for some further guidance about what options there will be for the for-profit providers to look at those sorts of cooperative and different models as well. So there is some work progressing in that area, and hopefully there'll be more sort of fruition from it over the next while.
Fabulous, thank you very much for that. Councillor David, you happy? Fantastic. Right then, we will move on then to the next item, which is Children and Family Services, which is pages 96 to 115. Councillor Amanda Williams, I know you had a question, so we'll go to you. And if anyone else has any, just pop your hands up in the usual way.
Thank you very much. Mine was on the foster families and the lack of foster families. Now, I had raised this in a previous meeting about the fact that counsellors can't become a foster carer in Bridgend, and I wondered if there's been any changes to this, because I know we're looking at whether that could be changed because other local authorities do allow them, and whether that would make it more people be available. And also I raised previously about when Ukrainians were coming over, households were asked if they had a spare bedroom for Ukrainian refugees. I was one of them who took a Ukrainian family in, and I wondered if we've made any progress on contacting any of those families to see if they have rooms available and whether they would be interested in the fostering service, so that we will have enough families to provide care for all the children in our borough. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Williams.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams, for your question. I have clarified. As members of Bridgend, we are able to foster. As good practice, though, what we're saying is we would refer you within our regional footprint. So that might be children from Merthyr Tydfil or Rhondda Cynon Taf, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to sit on things like scrutiny, some of council meetings, because you would have a personal and prejudicial interest. So that's what we're suggesting in relation to that. I would also highlight that 9 people we put through panel last week for foster care, and indeed we've got another foster care panel going on this morning in the Civic. So we are increasing our numbers and it is looking promising. In relation to the Ukrainians, yes, we did go back and we did ask for that, Councillor Williams. We are unable to get that information. It's not allowed to be shared with us under GDPR. So even though we're one council, some departments can't share further information across with us. Just for note. Thanks very much, Chair.
Interesting. Thank you for that, Deb. Councillor Ross Pennell-Thomas.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Two questions for me in this section of the report. So I wonder, I know it's cross-referenced in part of the report as well. So I wonder if the director can comment on the caseload per social worker in children's services, how that compares in Bridgend to perhaps some other local authorities, and whether that's acceptable, the average number of cases per social worker, and referencing perhaps previous inspections for Bridgend social services, in particular for children's and families, how we're developing the concept of professional curiosity, in particular among perhaps more junior members of staff in the social work team and those who are developing into perhaps middle manager roles. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Clare.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So in terms of our caseloads, they are now at what I would say is a reasonable level, and that's not a technical term, but in terms of the comparators to other local authorities, I think in our safeguarding localities, the averages are between 16 and 20 in terms of the last dashboards that we looked at, and we look at the dashboards on a fortnightly basis to ensure that ready oversight. That is no means a platinum standard. There was a survey across Wales, I think, within the last year, and I didn't see any authority come back with higher than 20, but 20 was the position in a number of authorities. There were some authorities that was lower than that, I would say, and it does fluctuate dependent on the time of year, because obviously we get less referrals through during the school summer holidays, but we keep a very close eye on it. I think we are confident now that workers have got enough time to do the work and to build those really strong relationships with children and families as part of the practice model. You asked the question about professional curiosity. One of the elements of training which every social worker in Bridgend is required to do is called back to basics training, and we run that regularly to make sure that we're picking up with all our social workers, including new recruits, including newly qualified social workers who come to work with us and are perhaps lacking that in-depth practice experience at that stage of their career. And obviously we've also invested very heavily in the science of safety training, and a key element of that science of safety training, and workers have gone through a 2 or a 5 day training, a 2 and a 5 day training program on that. So it's a massive investment from us as an authority, is to recognise what is a risk, but what is actually a danger to a child, and that sort of in-depth sort of practice knowledge and analysis. They're really being supported through that as well. That form, that then are the standards that we use to inform our quality assurance. And another element that we've really strengthened is our management oversight in terms of both managers. We now have consultant social workers in teams as well who focus on the quality of practice. And we have case consultations with more senior managers built in to the way that we work for those detailed case discussions where we need it as well. That Dave can probably add even more, but those are some of the basics really in terms of how we assure ourselves and the support for practitioners.
Fabulous, thank you for that, Claire. You content with those answers, Councillor Pennell-Thomas?
Yeah, I was gonna offer a ride around the case consultation, but if we talk about the specifics of the workforce, without going into any particular detail about any member of staff, are we content that there's the experience there and also the capacity in terms of time to support perhaps more junior social workers, and like I mentioned previously, those rising to middle manager roles, to enable them to develop their professional curiosity and also to potentially develop a loyalty to remaining in Bridgend?
Dave?
In terms of the junior members of staff and experience side of things, Councillor Pennell-Thomas, with the restructure and the operating model that we've implemented, we've now got enough capacity within teams to have enough social workers to undertake direct work with children and families, enough senior practitioners to support our newly qualified staff and our social workers, and then deputy team managers and team managers within one team. The culture that's then created within that team is very much about reflective practice. The signs of safety model enables us to think about it in that way, and with those teams then and the caseloads being as manageable as they are, enable staff to get the right support to think through very clearly in terms of what they're doing directly with children and families. So we feel quite confident really in terms of our structures that we've got them right now for staff to feel supported and undertake the very complex and challenging work that they do. and then have the access through the training that's available as well, then linked to professional curiosity, risk assessment training, the signs of safety model, etc., etc. In terms of middle management and opportunities then for managers to develop as well, we have training programs as well for those managers to have the opportunity to progress and keep them in Bridgend. And we've been fortunate where we have advertised other posts. We have had internal recruitment has been a part of that as well, where staff have accessed that support and training as well then. So currently we feel the structures are right, the training offers is right. The feedback coming from staff is telling us that they feel supported within the workplace and they feel able to do their work. There are always challenges in certain areas and at certain times, but fundamentally we seem to have the right resources around our staff at this moment in time.
Fabulous, thank you. You can turn, Councillor Pennell-Thomas.
Yeah, just one final writer question from me, and this is probably for the deputy leader actually, in terms of having a political influencing hat on. It's long been raised at committee meetings. I can use the term poaching between local authorities because there are different terms and conditions and different salary scales offered. What are the ongoing conversations about there being a more harmonised approach to terms and conditions, and in particular salary at social worker level across the 22 local authorities?
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thomas. So you will be aware that I lobby consistently for fairer funding for social services. I think that's really appropriate. I think one of the things that I would say is we've got a memorandum of understanding now across all local authorities that we've all signed up to. We did that under the auspices of the Joint Council for Wales, so all 22 local authorities. And essentially, we are all agreeing not to pay the agency rates that were, and we won't employ someone who's come from another authority within the past 6 months either. And the reason that we've done that is because we want to keep people where they are, because we need their experience, and I don't want people running off just to have a better pay deal with an agency, is what I want to say, and they are paid astronomically well if they are paid via an agency. That doesn't do us any favours. You know, indeed, you'll know about how much our managed team cost us in children's services when we didn't have that capacity. So I'm really pleased with what we're doing. I think the other thing that I would reference is the National Care Service. Whilst they might have appointed national officers now, there's actually no movement on what that means for Wales. Part of the reason is because we haven't got the ability to negotiate terms and conditions across the 22 local authorities. And actually, each local authority is an independent member. So that's a piece of work that's currently underway with Welsh Government and all Cabinet members, and indeed ADSS, the Association of Directors of Social Services. So I think that more or less answers your question. I will continue to lobby. You'll be aware and you will have seen the WLGA papers in relation to social services, particularly around the not-for-profit and the complexity and demand on adult services. So there is a wider conversation. We do need to stabilise our workforce across Wales, but we need those terms and conditions to be the same for all. Yes, you are right. Our terms and conditions are slightly different across all local, and I'll declare a prejudicial interest here because I am the workforce negotiator for Wales for all pay terms and conditions for all local government staff. Indeed, I do 13 employer bodies. So we are trying to maintain it, but we haven't got the finances in public services to award what we would like to award because our staff have lost significantly in terms of pay throughout since the pandemic began, as austerity began, and we have just reduced terms and conditions of our staff, which you'll know I'm not in favour of.
Okay, thank you for that, Dad. Councillor Pennell-Thomas, you okay?
Yeah, that covers it off very well. Thanks, Chair.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Okay. Did anyone else have any questions on the children and families part of the report before we move on? Give you a minute to find your mouse and click your buttons if you need to. No? Okie doke. All right, then we'll move on to the next item, which was prevention and well-being. Councillor Amanda Williams, did you have a question on this? I know you had other questions coming in.
Yeah, just the one question. It was on the prevention and well-being, and it was on about learning disabilities, because we offer a range of services, Now, I've been lucky to go up to Beleaf as part of the rota visiting to see what a phenomenal facility it is and what they do for members of the community, and they put things in place that allow them to get skills that they can then go out and potentially get some sort of job that would take the reliance off our services. But when I was up there, they said that they can only provide so much, one session a week for individuals. Sometimes they can up it to two. But I know that when we used to run it in-house, we used to have quite a large number of individuals who could use the service. So I wondered how, obviously resources are tight, how we can increase some of these services so that they can take the reliance off us, because they are fantastic services that I don't think people realise are out there either, and how we can better signpost to these facilities. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Claire?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and I completely agree. And it's one of the things that we're looking at as part of the review of daytime opportunities in Bridgend that I talked about, and that's due to come into overview and scrutiny committee 2, I think, in December, and then into cabinet either January or February. Forgive me not having the forward work programme, because it's a lot of work actually to review everything that's out there, and then to propose a different model really, and it builds on what I was talking about earlier, using specific grant funding such as SPF, to say, you know, for people who've got that aspiration to work and to make a contribution, which all of us have, you know, how do we enable that to happen for people who are furthest from the employment market as it's currently constructed, and how do we use schemes such as would be in Beleaf, not just to provide that employment and training for individuals who then remain there for the rest of their adulthood, but actually to move on through to take up volunteering positions, and maybe in some cases to move on into paid employment work. So that's one of the things which that day opportunities review is looking at, and yeah, look forward to that coming forward for consideration. Inevitably, we will need to consult on it with the public, because it will you know, herald change really in terms of the way that we have been supporting people. But I think, you know, examples like Woodby and Beleaf show us that then things can be different, and people have actually got skills and capabilities. Just, you know, that it's not so obvious, you know, for everybody what those skills and capabilities are, but everybody wants to make that contribution. So yeah, looking forward to bringing that review forward for consideration.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for that, Claire. Are you okay with that, Councillor Williams? Fabulous. Okay, Councillor Elaine Winstanley.
I just wanted to include Woodby and Beleaf in any declaration of interest that I've already made for this agenda item.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for that. We'll make sure that's noted and you fill that in when you get your form later on. Does anyone have any questions on this part or the next section, which is how we work, before we bring this item to a close? I'm looking around the room, there's no one here. No, okie doke. Well, on that note then, thank you very much for coming. Invitees, you're more than welcome to stay and listen to us continue our conversations, but you probably have work to do, I would hope. So we'll let you get on with that. And then we will move on to our next agenda item, which I believe I'm handing over to Rachel as the Scrutiny Annual Report. We'll just give everyone a minute to pack up their bags and go. Thank you, everyone. All right, Rachel, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the report before you today is the Scrutiny Annual Report, and the purpose is to present the committee's annual report or draft annual report over the 2-year period 22-23 and 23-24. We decided to do a 2-year period because if we brought it last year, it was a lot of kind of member training following the elections, etc. So there wasn't a huge amount we could actually include for 23-24. Sorry, 22-23. So we decided to combine it into a 2-year report. So the draft report is attached to Appendix A, and it provides details on the challenges and outcomes for scrutiny committees and the panels for this period. It also does identify some areas for improvement. We're always looking to strive towards developing further and getting further, achieving more positive outcomes for the residents of Bridgend. Obviously, it is a draft put before you. If members do have any comments or anything they think we should strengthen, or maybe something we've missed, hopefully not. But if you do think there's some amendments that need to be made, it is your report, so please put those forward. And then following your approval as a committee, it is presented to council in September. Many thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Rachel. I'm going to bring in Councillor Alex Alberini-Williams, because obviously he was the chair of COSC for the last 2 years. See if he has any comments before I move on, and you can see he's here. So let's see if he has anything before we ask members any questions. Take the silence as a no, that's fine.
I'm not sure, Chair, as I said, he said he would be in attendance, but he may be called away. So
yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. No, understandable. So any questions from members? Put your little yellow hands up. Councillor Hughes?
Yes, thanks, Chair. On page 158, it mentions the unprecedented number of call-ins during the period. I know that each call-in, there's a narrative on each case, which is really useful. Would it be helpful to the committee if we were to have some statistics of the number of call-ins in previous years, just to give us an idea of perspective on this one?
I can certainly add those in. If I recall correctly, I said Meryl is not here today, but I've almost got a funny feeling it's in comparison to a 0 for years before. But I will certainly clarify that. And yes, we can certainly add those in for comparison purposes in the report. Not a problem at all.
I think we had 2 for the entire 5-year term in the 2017 to 22, and I think we've definitely had more than 2 this term. So that's an interesting uptake. Councillor Amanda Williams, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I've got a question, but if we're on the subject of call-ins, I think the problem, though, is the reason we've had a number of more call-ins is that we've been having reports after they've gone to Cabinet. And I think the fact that we've now resolved to try and have these reports before going to Cabinet with our recommendations should reduce the number of call-ins, because that's the whole purpose of scrutiny. And I think it's just unfortunate that everything has fallen after those meetings, because otherwise there's no point in us having a look at something afterwards. So I would like to see that they would drop if we are getting a pre-Cabinet scrutiny of everything. You know, that's our purpose here.
Sorry, can I come back to you if that's okay?
Of course you can, Rachel.
Yes, I think that is certainly the aim. As much as anyone, Councillor Williams, from the scrutiny review we've undertaken, and I've drafted the scrutiny protocol. I'm happy to say it will be shared with scrutiny chairs, group leaders, and rest of scrutiny members very shortly. But yes, this is one of the focuses that we have been trying to get, to really push, is get an early sight of those reports to prevent call-in. Call-in, as we all know, is the last thing that you should be looking at, and we should be looking at getting in there early days. Positively, I can say in terms of, for example, education, we've really been able to do that with the homeschool transport. We already had pre-decision on that. There's also proposed nursery education as well, pre-decision. So we're just trying to, hopefully, we've got a proposal at the moment for SOC 3 for the waste to be pre-decision. So I think that is developing a lot, and it is strengthening certainly going forward. So I think, as I said, it's certainly not a criticism of the committee or anything or anyone in particular. It's just unfortunate that, that's where we've been in the last few years. And I think, as I said, hopefully going forward, we can reduce that, and it should be a more proactive with a lot more pre-decision coming forward. Fingers crossed.
Yes, thanks for that, Rachel. Yes, just to confirm, no criticism of anyone there, merely pointed out the interesting factoid that lives in my brain, the many of them. So, Councillor Amanda Williams, to your actual question, because I know that wasn't your actual question, you put your hand up.
No. So I was looking at the report and the tables you've got in there, for example, the number of externals, and I think that's quite low, 3 externals in the year, when we've looked at some really strong topics. So And then today we had the first report, which was for noting, but we only had some of the corporate directors. And I think maybe going forward, we need to be looking at our invitees, because I think that's an area for improvement, is the invitees, whether it be external or internal, and whether we can have a review of the internal invitees too, because quite often we'll have social services, but we won't have education. And there are links where we've had to then go back and ask these questions, and it can delay things. And we are here to scrutinise publicly, not to send, written questions in or ask for something. So I think for me, that's what I'd like to see. And I would like to see those externals going up as well going forward, because to make sure we've got the right people to give an overview.
It is a difficult one in terms of the externals for COSC, I would say, simply because it's the oversight you're looking at. So trying to pin down who you would have as that external representative, unless you're looking at a specific subject area, for example. I think, as I said, it's possible, I'd say maybe when we look at the budget, because I think, for example, yourselves, you do have the remit of the Chief Executive's directorate when we look at budget. And like we get educational representatives in on the budget for education, there may be someone in terms of your remit. I'm thinking of possibly, as I said, I know if you wanted as a committee to focus on the budget for homelessness, for example, when you look at the annual budget, I know that's tasked out to SOC 3 in general as a subject, but if from the budget you wanted to, you could look at that. But it is quite difficult because you have that oversight. If you think of the standard reports that COSC has, who would you necessarily look at in terms of performance, inviting someone when you're looking at the performance of the authority or the budget of the whole authority, unless you know you have specific areas you want to dig down into, which is absolutely fine. If you know the previous meeting, when we look at the performance next meeting, I really want to dig down into the performance of this area, that's perfect. And we can certainly, and you can identify external invitees to come in for that then. But it is somewhat difficult, as I said, unless that direction comes through, it's not clear because you're not focused on one particular area, if you see what I mean. So any suggestions I would be happy to take, definitely.
Thanks for that, Rachel. Councillor Williams, you want to come back?
Yes, please. It's just because I know I've been in meetings and we've said, oh, we would have liked to have asked these questions, and that person hasn't even been invited. More often than not, they are internal, and quite often it's education that's not invited for a number of the things. So I think it's as well as that, and that I would have thought, if we're looking and we're having the right invitees, again, that will bring down call-ins and everything, because we're getting our answers at the time rather than having to have a written response afterwards. Thank you.
I think it all boils down to sort of the forward work programme when we start planning that. I know we obviously put it at the end of the meeting and discuss it, and we do discuss invitees to a point, but I think maybe we need to have those conversations a bit more then. We have make them a little bit more defined rather than just sort of going through the forward work programme. We all go yes because we've all just had a 4-hour meeting and we're all extremely tired. So I think maybe we need to work a bit on that and maybe have that thought, and maybe if we think about a report, education wouldn't have come today for the social services that plan, but would they have, should we invite education? Because unless we put it in now, as we all know, corporate directors' calendars get quite full quite quickly. So I think probably something for us to all take on board. So when we're looking at our forward work programme, we look at the invitees as well a bit more, and maybe think about who else we can invite alongside that. Does anyone have any other questions before I move on? Okay, so one thing I wanted to ask Rachel is, it's not really a question about the report, but it is about something that's been mentioned in the report, is BREP. Now, I know members of the last BREP were, I'm going to say critical of BREP and the way it was used, treated, however you want to, word you want to use. I'm just wondering, have we sort of looked at how we're going to structure BREP this year? Because obviously we're in September now. Karis is probably halfway through writing her budget, if not tearing her hair out at it. So I'm just wondering where we are with the process of BREP and what it's going to look like this year.
BREP is now, as I said, we've got the terms of reference as they were, because they are kind of shall I say, when it was reviewed, we did look at this slightly in the scrutiny review, and I think it's agreed that it's not necessarily the terms of reference or the process that's the issue. It's kind of, we need to make sure what we get together is the change in need is then identified of BREP, and then we can utilize what the terms of reference. That's why we don't make it so clear cut in terms of that, so that we can change it each year depending on the demand. So I know from Carish, the latest update was that they had met with groups before the summer break. As agreed, they would meet with them to discuss the budget, etc. That has now happened, so we can look to kickstart our first BREP meeting. The first BREP meeting, I'm funny enough just been in kind of conversations via Teams with various officers. So we're trying to pin that down for the end of September. So that is the plan. BREP should be kicking off the end of September now with our first meeting, where I believe we're going to be looking at things like the recommendations from last year, so how responses to those, etc. Update from that. Start off with that and then start the process to see what you want to look at going forward. So just to let members know, I was looking at inviting the leader and Councillor Howell Williams, cabinet member for resources, because I think those are the two main ones for this introductory meeting. And then depending on which direction BREP takes, then depends on which cabinet members then we invite to the following meetings. So if members agree, if all members are agree with that, obviously we'd have the finance officer and the chief exec as well to those meetings. But that's the plan at the moment. Any thoughts so I can add to that from anyone?
I think that's fine. I'm looking around the room and everyone seems to be nodding their head in my room. Everyone seems okay. No hands are going up. All right then. Are we all happy with the report and give it our big thumbs up? Anyone say no? Say now. No, fine, we're all good. All right, thank you, Rachel. We'll move on to our next item, which is conclusions and recommendations. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Do you mind if we take this item by item, just so that... Is there anything that members would like to specifically recommend from item 3 to begin with?
There were no options, there were no questions, and it was a bit of a report. But does anyone have anything they want to add as a recommendation? I need to stop calling people by their first name. Councillor Williams.
It's difficult to have any recommendations because I didn't ask any questions because we weren't really given any information. It was a one-liner sort of response. And so I don't think we had the opportunity to tease anything out there. And I think that's something that's going to have to come in future meetings. So for me, there's no recommendations and there's no questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we're fine with that. Members seem, happy is a strong word, but they seem content. So agenda item 4, corporate plan targets.
I mean, obviously we covered quite a lot of ground there, but it was an information report. And obviously we ran into some difficulties about what kind of questions, in a sense, could be asked. But obviously we're in a position where we could translate the questions that members wanted to ask into not necessarily recommendations, but maybe requests for further information. But I'm happy to take it as members want to. But it feels to me like members wanted a lot more than we were able to discuss. But yeah, please, if there are recommendations or requests for information, then I'll very happily note them for our report.
I think it was more along the. There were a couple of questions on the sort of the accuracy of things, but I think everything on the whole was. I think it was mainly we wanted more information on certain parts of the report. But I'll open up to members. Councillor Hugh David.
Thanks, Chair. Because of the discussion we subsequently had, I didn't raise it at the time because I wasn't sure if it was the right time to raise it. And this certainly isn't about the current indicators, but it's about the next iteration because they always change, don't they? But I'm simply reflecting on the fact that I've had a quick look again through the performance indicators, and I don't think there's a single one there on financial performance. There's not a single one. Now, I know finance is included in the corporate performance assessment framework, and there are action points around budget. But I wonder whether or not we could be making a potential recommendation around strengthening the focus on financial performance within that framework, because we do know that indicators are used because they help focus the minds around performance, and the risk is if none of your performance indicators are on finance, then there's not as much focus as we would want there to be. I know there is, but we need greater focus, particularly given recent reports. So that would be a potential suggestion, I think. And I know colleagues will want to come in about the current set of indicators. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor David. I agree with you on that. I think we know from, well, common knowledge that the council's budget and finances it's going to be the thing that defines what we do over this year and the next few years. So I think that performance needs to be monitored a little bit more closely. I think so. So yeah, I agree with that, and we'll see about members. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Yeah, on that note, one of my other questions which I didn't ask then was linked to the finances surrounding one of the targets as well. So I would agree with that. But this report also says, whilst it was for noting, it said that these were the changes following our last recommendations, and then they were changes and then they were finalised, so they couldn't be changed. So I think we do have the right to be able to put recommendations forward going forward, because this is the first time we've seen some of these additions and these changes. We didn't agree this before. We agreed the previous things. These are our added requests to go into this report. I'm happy to send my list of questions that I asked and had. There was only 2 I didn't ask then, because I think we do need to make sure, when I raised the thing about attendance in schools, our targets should be our national targets. They should be our regional targets, not our targets. And I think we need to look at things like that for the future. And I think we need to still be putting recommendations in so that next year we're not sat here with questions told we're not allowed to ask the questions now because they haven't changed. It at least hopefully will assist, rather than be critical of staff, it will assist them further. So we should have less questions next year then, because we've been working on this from now.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we can definitely take that in our recommendations. But Steve?
I'm quite happy to turn that into a recommendation, and obviously if you send me your points as well, then we can probably turn some of those into requests for further information as well that will inform the debate on the development of these performance indicators as the year goes by. And I think the committee saw the corporate plan, I think, in March this year. So I'm assuming it'll be back then as well for consideration.
I've been informed that there's a monitoring meeting in December, so we'll have this back on our agenda in December. So we'll have a chance to see how we're going and ask more questions there. Maybe we can invite a legal officer, either Laura or Kelly, to the meeting so that we can have this discussion as well, maybe in the pre-meeting as well, so members are aware of what avenues we want to take in, because I know the monitor officer's here, but she's not in the meeting and can't, unless she shouts very loudly, it's not going to be caught up by my microphone. So I think that might just be something for that meeting then. So, but yeah, I think that, and with your other comments for further information, and also things like the attendance could be something that SOC1 we put on our agenda. I know we're both on that committee, and we could put it on there as our agenda because it's something that needs monitoring and looking at. Okay, so has anyone got any more comments or recommendations or requests for further information on the corporate plan targets? I lost my page then. No. Okay, fabulous. Any for the social services annual report, Stephen?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we covered quite a lot of ground under item 5, and there was one very specific recommendation about the recovery plan potentially coming to SOC 2, but also then members brought to our attention the idea of bringing it to COSC. I mean, we can have discussions about where the recovery plan goes and how it's considered by scrutiny committees. And there were some requests for information in terms of the Shared Prosperity Fund in terms of foster families and so on. But I think that the overriding theme of the discussion there was about transformational change and sustaining change with the budget cuts. So obviously, just as we've discussed the financial situation in regard to some of item 4, they are, if anything, more important in terms of item 5. So it could be that members would like to bring forward some recommendations about how we consider some of that in the future, but I'm open to whatever members want to say on that.
One I was thinking of, and members obviously come in and tell me if it's not a good idea. We talked about, well, Councillor Amanda Williams asked about the families who took in Ukrainians, who had the spare bedroom and potential as foster parents, and the DEP obviously answered that. Obviously, due to GDPR, one part of the council can't talk to the other part of the council and give it. I'm just wondering, is it something that maybe that part of the council that has all the information of who took the Ukrainians could send out information about foster families if they don't do already and foster in, and then they can then get in touch, GDPR, and then get in touch with foster in Bridgend to see if they want to do it, and then maybe give them the information, and then obviously then we're covered by GDPR. Just another way around of doing it instead of one arm of the council can't talk to the other arm of the council. I don't know how other members feel. Councillor Amanda Williams, you've got your question. You got your hand up. Hand up.
Yeah, mine was not on that, but I agree with you on what you've said. There were 2 reports that are going to SOC 2. The other one was about our partners and how we can utilise those more for individuals with learning disabilities or who need extra support. I think the director said it was going in December, and then the other report wasn't at the end of September, beginning of October. So I don't think we would need to repeat that because we've got enough to do ourselves as committee, but it would be nice for us to have the recommendations from there, or to see it be shared amongst us outside of here so that we can see what's going on going forward. But I don't think we need to see it again, but I would certainly like to find out what how both of those meetings go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I'm not sure it's been specifically programmed for SOC 2, but there's certainly a list of areas that will be during this year. I mean, obviously the next meeting, it's delayed pathways of care and then extension of the Healthy Living Partnership. And
maybe something we could put on our agenda for us as chairs to have a discussion.
Yes, I think that's.
Because I know we've got the DFG that we need to sort out where that's going.
Yes, exactly.
So I wonder if we can put that in and get that in the calendar so we can.
I'll note that.
Sort that. Yeah, fabulous. Councillor David.
I'm wondering if there's any way that we can strengthen our focus on finance on all future reports that come to us. Maybe in the way that we structure the way that reports come to us, and at least ensuring that within those reports there's an update on financial implications, financial forecast, and how the relevant directorate is remaining within that budget. And that is why I suggested the possibility of the recovery plan for social services coming to us, because I think sometimes other committees, understandably so, will have a focus, won't they, on perhaps a different focus on outcomes and service, whereas this committee can have a more corporate focus, and that more corporate focus at the moment will be a balance. Obviously, it's not just about finance, but a balance between finance and those other pressures, and that's why I suggest that we consider that maybe it's a joint meeting of the committees, or that we consider that financial recovery aspect of it. And SOC, the SOC committee focuses then on impacts on people and services and staff, etc. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, yeah, I think we can put that in. Steve. Yeah, fabulous. Okay. Does anyone have any more conclusions or recommendations or comments on the social services report before we move on to the scrutiny annual reports? No? Okay. All right, then. Same again, conclusions, recommendations, and comments on scrutiny annual report then. Stephen, go ahead.
I've noted what was said in the discussion. There was discussion about the call-ins and putting maybe a re-emphasis on ensuring that reports come to scrutiny before they go to cabinet. That's certainly been a very important issue in discussions about forward work programs this year, and it's equally true for SOC 2 as SOC 1 and 3. And obviously the issue of invitees and the relationship between different strands of our services, I think that's very worthwhile discussing when obviously things come forward which seem to be about one thing, but actually there's an interrelationship which needs to be managed very carefully. I didn't note anything about BREP. That seemed to be okay for now. Yeah. So I don't think there's a specific recommendation about that to come forward from this meeting.
No, I think it's something for BREP to look at when BREP adjourns at the end of September for me. Yeah. All right. Does anyone have anything? No? Okie dokie then. We shall move on to agenda item 8, which is the forward work programme update. So we'll look at our lovely forward work programme, and I'll hand over again to Stephen.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Well, the purpose of this report is to present the committee with the forward work programme attached as Appendix A for consideration and approval. Obviously, request any specific information the committee has identified to be included in items for the next meetings. Request the committee to identify whether there are presently any further items for consideration on the forward work programme long term. Present the recommendations monitoring action sheets for this committee at Appendix B, and then the forward work programmes for the subject overview and scrutiny committees attached as Appendices C, D and E. Also included is the regulatory report tracker, which is reported to Governance and Audit Committee on a regular basis. The last time it went was on the 19th of July. And that's attached at Appendix F. A further update to the tracker will be reported to future meetings for information following an updated report to Governance and Audit Committee. The recommendations for the forward work programme are on page 193. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Looking at our forward work programme, we'll start with that before we talk about some potential other items. Everyone okay with what we've got? Anyone think about the invitees? Is there anyone that we should add? Anyone we think missed? Or anyone you think anyone's been missed for the invitees for any of the subject and overview scrutiny committees? Just to say, I'll declare an interest on the SOC 1 on the 16th of September. That's my strategic plan. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to be in that meeting. Anyone else have anything they want to add? Okay. Does anyone think any potential topics going forward that we think we should be looking at? Obviously, we've made some notes to the ones already for the social services, and obviously there's a couple potential ones for education, which I know we can pick up as well. Obviously, in the strategic plan, obviously attendance is part of that. For instance, Councillor Williams.
I was just wondering if we'd have the opportunity like we have in the past, because if you look at the MTFS, obviously we're all on our separate scrutiny committees, but we won't see what's being discussed on the others by the time it comes back to us, whether we'd have the opportunity to sit and observe what's raised in the other committee meetings so that we're not going to be duplicating. And if we had any questions, we could send them to the chair of that committee. So make sure that they are covered. Because I noticed on the January meeting, there's only the cabinet member for finance and the finance officers come in, no other directors. So rather than us have questions and we won't have directors there, because everyone obviously will be busy at that time for the budget, but otherwise I know I'll have my list of questions and I'll be told there's nobody here to answer those, or they should have been for the specific meetings.
I know from the past they've tried to keep corporate to basically the corporate entity of it rather than go into each one. I wonder, I understand the point of members are writing questions. I think that's something that we should add in. But Stephen, I don't know if you've got anything.
I mean, as far as I know, the invitees are fairly flexible in terms of these meetings, and everyone is certainly open to discussion about who should be invited, and it's entirely up to members in that respect.
Because obviously each year, well, Amanda, you'll know, each year we've seemed to have changed the way we do budget scrutiny because of the way it all ends up. I think one year we did them all in one day, which is it was a very long day and was not very helpful, I don't think. So I don't know, maybe it's something we could take away and have a chat about as chairs as well, about members writing in and who we invite, and maybe even invite other members if they so wish to attend. I wouldn't be against if Councillor Amanda Williams wanted to join SOC 3 for an afternoon. She's more than welcome to, just for example.
Yeah, we'll discuss it with Rachel and Merrill, and we'll go from there. But
Councillor Alex Ilberini Williams, you've got your hand up. And you're on mute, sir.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Sorry, that's a bit of a tongue twister, Councillor Ilberini Williams. Thanks, Chair. I just want to agree with Councillor Amanda Williams about the potential for duplication in the different scrutiny committees, and I think it's a very good idea for we as members of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee to ensure that there isn't duplication and that the individual scrutiny committees do some kind of deep dives into their specific directorates, because there has been some duplication in the past. So I would agree with that. I also have some comments on the forward work programme for Scrutiny Committee 1, and perhaps you can bring me in at the appropriate point on that.
Fabulous, no problem, I will do. Amanda, you got your hand up? Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, it was just to come back on that, because obviously whilst we're COSC, I don't have anyone in this meeting who sits on Corporate Overview and Scrutiny 3, because the way we've done it, because we've only got the 3 places, we've got our group leader, our deputy group leader and our scrutiny chair. So that's just the way it falls, and it might be the same with others. So of course we wouldn't have anyone come in with that, which is why I think if we're here representing, we need to have the whole picture. But I just wanted to come back with that bit on my last point when you said about obviously SOC 3.
No worries. Something for us to look at and see the thing.
Yeah, can I just follow that up by asking, is there a specific meeting you were thinking of that should have more invitees or different invitees or different people contributing?
No, it's from last COSCs when we were looking at the MTFS. We spent several hours asking questions of corporate directors, whereas they would have been better placed, because I'm on education, I didn't need to ask those education ones, but I was asking questions in relation to SOC 2 and SOC 3. Whereas if we're invited, or we're able to give questions if we've got them, or we're able to understand where the questions are from, we can then understand the whole of the MTFS, because it isn't just COSC or the committee that we sit on. So it's just to make sure that when it comes to COSC, we're not duplicating and we're aware of what's been discussed in the other committees, which should have happened first.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. As I say, we'll take that away, and Alex, Freya, and myself we'll talk about it, and we'll see what we can come up with, some sort of solution on the budget. And one year we'll get it right. We'll be fine. Right. So, Alex, you wanted to come back on SOC 1 forward work programme. Do you want to do that now? Because I have nothing on my...
Yeah, I can do that now. Lindsay, Corporate Director for Education, of course, and Councillor Jones as Cabinet Member for Education. We discussed the forward work programme last week. There have been some updates to it. Obviously, next week, next Monday, we've got the Education, Early Years and Young People Director of Strategic Plan, as you mentioned. Then we are looking at changing the date of the following meeting to ensure that we have pre-decision scrutiny on nursery provision, which Lindsay said was a crucial report to consider in advance of going to Cabinet. The school modernisation update is dependent on the capital expenditure, which would be obviously contained within the MTFS. So that will be moved for now with members' permission. And then we will be discussing, I think it was mentioned earlier on by Councillor Amanda Williams, about behaviour, attendance and exclusions. Now, Lindsay was saying that this is an item which is high on his agenda, specifically behaviour within schools. So that will be something which members will want to look at in great depth. So those are the updates to the Scrutiny Committee 1 forward work programme.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Alex. On that note, actually, for 3, just so members are all aware, we're switching round the Monday the 30th of September and the Monday the 2nd of December meetings. We're switching around the agendas. So we'll do waste on the 30th, which I won't be able to chair. Councillor Colin Davis, I think, is going to chair that meeting. And then the homelessness one will move to the 2nd of December. But that was decided after this report was sent out. So that's why I put in this. So, Councillor Hugh David.
Thanks, Chair. On the housing and homelessness update, I can see there's focus on energy efficiency, affordable, accessible social housing, empty homes, and I know they're related, but I hope that there's also going to be a very strong focus on the number of people in temporary housing in the county borough, because that has risen again, is my understanding. Yeah. There's a very big financial cost to this authority of that. It's now over £3 million, whereas it was not even a tenth of that before the pandemic. And it may be helpful if the committee would consider looking at that, is just on the number of people in temporary housing in the county borough, how that can be addressed, yeah. What more can be done. I know there's work underway, and how that compares to other local authorities as well, because building on a point that I made earlier, that's becoming a corporate issue for us, isn't it? Because of the financial implications of that. That is a huge increase in the budget. Yeah. So I think it would be helpful if the committee could consider that, because there's some crossover certainly with this committee, yeah. Chair.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We are, Councillor David. We've narrowed down the scope of that meeting, as it was quite a broad meeting. We've narrowed it down, and I think we're going to have a second one with the social landlords as well, because obviously we brought them in. It would just turn into a bit of a thing against them. So we've narrowed down that focus a little bit. Myself, I met with Martin Morgan's, Karis Price, and the cabinet member, Councillor Farr, and we've sort of narrowed down where the committee wants to go with it. So that is part of the ones we're looking at. Part of the issue we're looking at there is empty homes, and also, as you said, the homelessness factor and the temporary accommodation, and how we're trying to bring those numbers down, because I think it's the second biggest overspend after social services is temporary accommodation, and like social services, it's only going up, and we need to sort of handle that if we're going to, as we mentioned earlier, about our financial implications. So yes, that's what we're looking at on SOC 3. I hope everyone's asked their questions or had their thoughts heard. Fabulous. No one's putting their hands up. Everyone's looking like they want to go home. So on that note, I gavel this meeting back, and I end this meeting. There we are. There's no urgent items, but that's fine. I am all right with that, which I always find funny. All right, go on. See you all later.